You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Everybody, welcome to No Gi Tuesday. We are the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, who is also helming this amazing station we call the Rational Alternative. Any news on the Rational Alternative front, Mr. Liebowitz?
Well, on the Rational Egoist, I did my very last episode of the show. It's out right now. It's the completion of the series on using objectivism for self-help. This particular episode is on happiness. Jim Valiant was there. We knocked it out of the park, I believe. So they can check that out over on the Rational Egoist. But from now on, I'm all Rational Alternative every day.
I would expect nothing less for you and James Valiant to knock it out of the park. Just saying.
We rock the bells, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some super chats and super stickers today over here.
Don't forget that, folks. Super chats and super stickers. It's what Michael lives for. So please make him a happy man. Look at that smile. Look at that radiant smile. You want to keep that thing going. So make sure you give us those super chats and super stickers. Michael, Ziggy right now is wearing the cone of shame. He's wearing the cone of shame now because he's starting to lick that little wound, you know, that little scar that he's got from his surgery, and the stitches aren't healed yet. So I had to throw the cone of shame on him today. And I'll tell you what, a 15-pound dachshund is no shit. A 200-pound man putting a cone of shame on a 15-pound dachshund is a sight that should have been videotaped.
Well,
and
why wasn't it
used in jiu-jitsu academies around the world for technique? Because I only had 2 hands and 2 feet, Michael, and I needed all of that to subdue him. So man, Michael, there's nothing but bad news on the horizon. Everything seems so bleak and dark. I think we're gonna have to start ending each episode with something very positive, because when I was reading through the news today, I wanted to shoot myself. What?
Well, we've been down that road before where we say that we're going to do that. It just doesn't really work out so well. But we do the capitalist thought of the day at the end.
That's true. And that's that's positive. So we're in this thing called the war with Iran, Michael, which the president doesn't really define as a war. It's an incursion.
You just sounded like Trump, by the way.
I did. Well, you know.
We're in this thing called
the
war with Iran.
War with Iran. Yeah, but he calls it an incursion, sort of a brief stay, a vacation stop. I don't know. He calls it all kinds of things except a war. And but we're in it. We're in it. And as we've said in the past, Michael, there's really only 2 options going forward. One option seems bad. The other option seems worse. It's almost worse to withdraw at this point, given the fact that our main geopolitical enemies, China and Russia, are watching what we do in Iran, and not just paying attention to our military dominance there, but also to how much spirit does America have? How much stick-to-itiveness does it have? Do they only have enough just to carry them through an election cycle, or will they see a conflict through to the end? And China in particular, which has designs on Taiwan, is really paying attention to this. So leaving now would be a moral victory for Iran and a moral loss for the United States, and it would put us. I think our enemies would see this as an advantageous point from which they could launch their own conflicts from, Michael. The other alternative is to stick in and get regime change, which is also ugly. Some say we can do it without troops on the ground. I don't know that that's possible. At the moment, we're doing a trade, a sort of disproportionate trade with Iran. They're attacking our bases in Jordan. A couple of service members were killed, by the way. Apparently, there were 3 other attacks that were not reported by the Pentagon. And then we attack their military infrastructure, their radar stations, their ballistic missile capacity in an attempt to degrade it further. And so far, it's done nothing really to deter Iran. In fact, it's inspired their proxies, the Houthis in Yemen, to come forward and now place an embargo or on the Persian Gulf and to prevent traffic, which is not inconsiderable, Michael. 12% of
Okay,
trade goes through there.
you're
So-
going you're going way too far.
Where have I heard that before?
Because I'm trying to learn you a little something about this whole thing.
No, no,
right?
no. Don't tell me about parceling out information to try to. No. I'm framing the whole conflict, and then you can comment on that.
Okay, but
Okay.
but here's the thing: when you go so much, and then it gets to me, it's too much to comment on because now I'm going from beginning to end. That's what you know how they
That's
have
true.
phone numbers, like phone numbers. They put the little dash in between, and the phone number is limited to 7 numbers because they want you to be able to remember it. So I put the commas in the title so that you know to stop in one place. But now you've gone over into the Saudis.
It's
and the
all
Houthis.
related. Yes. I don't believe in commas, Michael, but
But they're not trying to close the Persian Gulf, so you that's what I'm saying. You
They're
gotta
not.
slow
I didn't
down.
say they're trying to close the Persian Gulf.
You did. You
They're-
said they're trying to close the Persian
they're-
Gulf off to
they're-
the Saudis.
They're claiming they're going to enforce an embargo.
But
in the
that's
Persian
not. But
Gulf.
that no. But it's not. But no. Let's back up a little bit here. Can we
Yeah,
back
go
up?
ahead.
Just
Tell me
a
where
bit?
I'm at. But first, before we say that, Mary Ribbon says, not all news is bad. The content of this channel is awesome. Thank you very much. And Annabelle is lame. Agreed. As a movie, it's lame. Still, the doll is haunted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And Mark Pellegrino is awesome. When I get on you, the audience beats me up. They don't ever beat you up for messing up or for saying things to me. They get on me and tell me how mean I am, and that sort of thing.
Thank you,
But-
Kathy Casico, for the $2.99 super sticker. I have to say that because she's throwing love your way, baby. After all this commentary that you're busting my balls, the audience is against you, which is true because they have a sense of justice, Michael. You get a little act of love here from Catherine. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Go ahead. So correct me where I was in it.
Well, no, I don't want to correct you. I want to start from the beginning here with the options. So Trump evidently is weighing further negotiations. I can't even believe I'm saying that, like that we're weighing further negotiations or the possibility of regime change. Now, I just want to go back a little bit here because this whole thing was supposed to last 4 to 6 weeks maximum. Trump has declared victory, I don't know how many times, destroyed their military, I don't know how many times, and yet they're still attacking. So now we're in this position where it's, what are you going to do? This is not going to cut it. You say, according to some people, again, that's Trumpian language. A lot of people are saying, that this can be done without ground troops. I don't think it can. I'm by no means a strategic genius when it comes to the military, but as long as I've been paying attention to the news, they say you can't do this kind of thing without ground troops. You got to have ground troops in there. So now you're in this position. First of all, you're in an unconstitutional war. You've also violated the War Powers Resolution, but they're claiming, well, that's unconstitutional. But they also claim that, no, you have pauses and this and that and restarting the clock and all kinds of BS. And we're in this situation where, as you accurately put, Iran's going to get a moral victory and we're going to look like putzes over here, right? So now what do? Do you send in the ground troops? Which, by the way, is no guarantee you're going to have this immediate success, right? And even if you get rid of the regime, well, okay, then what's next? Because he's already said he's not going to put the Shah's kid, Pahlavi, I don't know how to pronounce it, in office. He doesn't want that. So what
Whoa.
are you going to do then?
Do we trust his word anyway? I think if it were practical for him, he would probably install.
I don't think we can trust anything. So now, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And you've already have now people on his side, for instance, Laura Ingraham saying they've got to get out of this thing because why? Not because the war is unconstitutional. No. Not because it's against the law. Not because Americans are dying. No, we need to get out of it because the election's coming up and this is going to hurt Republicans.
Unfreaking believable.
Right. That is dumb, 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 and dumb. Right. So that we have that. And then you said something else. Oh, there's this issue where the Pentagon is not reporting on injuries, attacks, that sort of thing. Now, I don't know enough about that specific topic to really give a strong opinion that they should be releasing that information. What I do know is this, is that I don't trust the Trump regime and I don't trust the people working for it. So when stuff like this comes out, that there were these attacks that they didn't report, I'm kind of like, what? You know what I mean? This seems bad. So, I mean, I have to go, I go through the news in the morning. And other than Iran, there's really not much going on. And what are we going to do? Again, I said this before. Are we going to just ignore it? And I don't know how much more we can say about it. Trump has botched this thing incredibly, and it was obvious he would do so. Okay. Now, do you want to get to Djibouti?
Djibouti?
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So what they're trying to do now, the Houthis, I think it's pronounced Houthis, or is it Houthis? I don't know. The Houthis, I know,
It doesn't
are in
matter.
Rwanda.
They're savages.
But they're threatening a maritime embargo against the Saudis. So what it is, it's on this Bab el Mandeb. I'm probably butchering it, but whatever. It's spelled BAB space EL-MANDEB. It's a narrow strait between Yemen, which is on the Arabian Peninsula, and Djibouti, which is on the Horn of Africa. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean. And it's pretty serious, situation that we have going on here. So this would disrupt Saudi exports, and that is 7% of the global supply if fully blocked. Tightens markets already.
I thought it was 12%, Michael.
According to that might be something else, but this would be 7%. I think that 12% of global supply goes through that.
Okay.
Goes through the Al Bob, but 7% would be straight from the Saudis. So that's now an issue. And these guys, by the way, are not good guys. These Houthis, they're part of Iran's axis of resistance. They adhere to something called Zaydism. It's a branch of Shia Islam, and it believes spiritual and temporal leadership should be held by descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, and developed as a militant, radicalized offshoot of their, revivalist movement. They've been operating in Yemen. During the Arab Spring, they kind of popped up and were causing a lot of trouble. They've had multiple wars with the Saudis. They overthrew the Yemeni government. We've gotten involved over there, and they've been disrupting. What's the word I'm looking for here? Commerce. So we've got a big problem on our hands now. We've got the Strait of Hormuz, which Trump's people keep saying is open, but then I don't know why we have to keep bombing and what the problem is if it's open. Which, by the way, one of the agreements that these other countries are putting forward is a 10-day ceasefire to allow traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, because those things have worked out so well in the past. So that's it. Do we want to know more about the Houthis? Do you want to comment? What's going on?
Well, according to Trump, we decimated the Houthis, so I don't know what they're doing, threatening an embargo over in that part of the world. They shouldn't be able to do it. We should have degraded their capabilities so much that they cannot actually enforce that embargo. But Michael, as usual with Trump, it's probably not true. So look, there's really only one way forward as I see it, and that's taking out dual use infrastructure and making the Iranian people and the regime suffer under ever greater pressure. What we have here, Michael, is the Western folks can't imagine that any regime would put their people through this kind of suffering in order to win a moral victory on the world stage. But guess what? They don't care about their people, and they are willing to risk everything for a moral victory. So until Trump starts knocking out bridges and power grids and actually taking out their capacity to produce oil to ship to other places, and really placing Iran in a full on crisis, of a greater crisis than they're in now, there will be no victory. And Michael, that to me, envisions a very long-term conflict that goes well beyond the election. I mean, this could be Trump's Vietnam. Certainly, the way in which they're pursuing the war is not with the intention to actually gain a victory over there. It's certainly not going to gain a victory by the time the midterm elections come out, and this is certainly fodder for the opposition. Hold on, I have to save the dog. You talk.
All right. I just want to find this. This whole thing here that just happened. The Saudis have been embargoing the Houthis, and they also bombed this airport. And I want to find the name of the airport. I thought I had it. Let me find it. Okay, so the Saudi-backed Yemeni government bombed the runway at the Houthi-controlled Sana'a International Airport to prevent an Iranian aircraft from landing, and this prompted the Houthis to retaliate by launching ballistic missiles and drones at Saudi Arabia's Abha International Airport. These guys are now, I guess, back in military conflict. What's inevitable here, it seems to me, Mark, what's going to happen is oil prices are, of course, going to skyrocket. Gas prices are going to skyrocket. Trump is going to be getting more pressure to end this, and then he's going to want to do more negotiating, and we're just going to stay in this. What I think is likely to happen is the Democrats are going to get control in the fall, and then they're going to start making a lot of noise about ending this war. And this is the position, Mark, right? What do? We opposed getting involved in this from the beginning, and now it's a disaster. And now what do we recommend? What do we say? I don't see any positive result that comes from this. That I don't see what the point is. They just keep saying they can't have nuclear. They can't have nuclear. All right.
It's troubling, Michael, because there's no real resolution to win. There's no real clear intent to change the regime over there, which is really the only way they can win. So they've painted themselves into a corner. It's what's called, I think in common parlance, Michael, clusterfuck. And that's where they are now, where one gets the sense that there is no real victory possible here. That either way they go, they're going to experience incredible negative results. So, I'm of the mind that you have to go all in and you have to defeat the regime at this point. But that's going to require politically unfeasible actions on the part of the regime. Politically unfeasible and frankly illegal, given the fact.
Okay, let me pose a hypothetical to you.
Sure.
Right. Suppose Trump just said, you know what, this was an error. He doesn't say that, of course, because he's not going to do that. But he knows that it was an error, knows he shouldn't have done it. And he just says, listen, we accomplished our objectives. Now we're getting out. We're getting out of here. If anybody else does not want the Straits of Hormuz tolls or taxed or anything else, then it should be incumbent upon them to open it up. We've done what we needed to do, and he leaves. Okay. What would likely be the result for us? What harm or what do you think would happen? Because like you just said, for instance, you said what needs to be done is this. Okay. So if we don't then do what needs to be done, what do you think is going to occur?
I think we give encouragement to China with respect to their desire to unify the mainland with Taiwan. I think that we give our enemies abroad a encouragement as well, because they understand that, our determination only extends to election cycles, and that the politicians are too afraid to buck the electorate or to act on principle, because they're really afraid of the election cycle. So all they have to do is hold out for a few months, and that's what Iran is hoping for. Really, they're banking on, we just have to hold out for 3 or 4 more months, and the American people will do the work for us. I think we lose prestige with our allies, particularly Israel, who is a good ally in the Middle East, because we cannot sustain a conflict for long, and we can't hold to our promises. We're mercurial, of course, reflecting the disposition of our president. And those are significant losses, Michael. I mean, they seem like moral losses in a sense, and losses of stature on the international stage, but that matters in the world.
I don't disagree, Mark, but that is all very abstract.
True.
Loss of prestige. China may do this. What I'm specifically, let me get really right to it. If we get out, what is going to be the direct result coming from Iran? Do you think we're going to see, for instance, an Iran nuclear attack on the United States within 10 years? Is there going to be some sort of another type of Iranian attack on the United States within the next 10 years? If we got out of there, are we then at imminent risk? What's the word I'm looking for here? At existential risk or something close to it coming from Iran?
Imminent? I don't know. I don't know within the next 10 years, but certainly they would be undeterred as a enemy of the United States. In fact, they'd probably be emboldened. I mean, there's a reason, Michael, that they don't fire at Israel, right? That they're firing at Jordan, they're firing at the UAE. They're not really attacking Israel right now, because Israel will retaliate, and they'll retaliate in a manner that will really, really hurt Iran. They're not stupid. They understand how to place pressure on the American government in such a way as to inspire only so much violence from the United States, not enough violence to undo the regime. If the regime stays in there, Michael, and the ideology stays in there, I mean, they will always be a thorn in the side of the world. Imminent threat in 10 years? I don't know how much we've actually degraded their capacity to create nuclear weapons.
See, I think they're a thorn in the side of the world, but there's a lot of countries like that are pains in the ass. It's just that I don't believe that Iran was ever the threat that they've been made out to be. I think that they're...
I think you're clearly right. If anything, the 12-day war and this conflict with Iran has exposed them as a paper tiger. They simply don't have the military infrastructure to deal with with the kind of military might that a free society can bring down on them.
Right. They're capable, it seems, of withstanding attacks because they just don't give a shit. But beyond that, they're not capable of doing much damage. As you pointed out, they've been bombing their neighbors. A lot of their missiles are getting intercepted. They're not doing a lot of damage. I'm very skeptical of the idea that they were going to be a serious threat to the United States coming up. Now, if we look at foreign policy and you go back and you say, okay, we got rid of their enemy in Iraq, we got rid of their enemy in Afghanistan, that clearly strengthened them. Yeah. But they've got a lot of regional conflicts that if we don't put our thumb on the scale, maybe they just are fighting with each other. I mean, like if you look at this Yemeni thing, these Houthis, they I guess they lost power in 2004, and then during the Arab Spring, or maybe a little bit before that, they went back in and they ousted the government. But then the Saudis got involved, and guess with whose help? With our help. So we side with one set of bad guys
for which Obama took a very little shit, but there was an induced famine over in Yemen
right.
that the Saudis induced to try to destroy their will.
Yeah. Now, none of these governments are good people, and I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying quite the contrary. And when we get involved, we tend to tip the scales one way or the other. Why not just let them fight it out? And I think it comes back to ultimately oil. And then that comes back to having better energy policy here at home, liberalized drilling for oil, nuclear power, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not of the view, I never was, that Iran was this dire threat to us. I was open to hearing arguments, but with all the arguments I've heard, none of them have been very compelling. Are they a pain in the ass? Yes. Are they dangerous? Sure. Could they kill Americans? Yes. But I don't know. Yeah, sure. I just don't know. They haven't killed them here, though. Right? Not that it doesn't matter that they've killed Americans overseas. It does. I'm just saying when you're talking about a danger to the country, it matters that they haven't been able to execute attacks here. And so, I mean, you have ISIS that's killed plenty of Americans. That Qatar, I don't know if they're funding ISIS. I lose track of who these maniacs fund and protect and everything else. But you have radical Islam all over the world. It's not just Iran, or I should say all over the Middle East, in Africa, not just in Iran. We clearly don't have it in us to go to war everywhere all over the planet. I just don't see that Iran is the singular, unique threat that necessitated going to war. Again, I'm open to hearing arguments. I really am. And I'm not, I know they're bad and I know they've attacked Americans. I get all that. But was this worth it? What we've done now? Would it be worth it to send in American troops where you have thousands of Americans killed over there to fight them? Were they that level of threat where we need to do that type of thing? I guess that's my question mark. I'm kind of thinking out loud, to be honest.
I don't see it. There was a time, of course, when I did. I agreed with Peikoff's analysis of the situation, that they were the sort of inspiration to the Islamic world and for the spread of Islamic terror around the world. I don't think that way anymore. So I can't say that they were certainly a threat because they were trying to extend their hegemony over the region. They were certainly a regional threat because, of course, they extended their influence into Syria. They extended their influence into Iraq and, of course, into Yemen. And they were working on establishing hegemony there. Now, it did occur to me also, Michael, that perhaps if there was a strategy at all, which I don't see, but if there was a strategy at all, it was to drag in the Arab states in a regional conflagration whereby these states, in the interest of self-preservation, would band together and attack Iran and take out its power completely. I mean, it's not like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE don't have some capacity to be able to do that. They could. They're just sort of fence sitting at the moment, and UAE in particular, and Qatar in particular, all funders of Islamic terror around the world. They're sitting on the fence and pretending to be the negotiators for peace, when perhaps the idea is to draw them into a wider conflagration and make them responsible for their own safety. I don't know, Michael. Right now, Trump is in a clusterfuck, and that's for sure. And there's no easy way out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark.
And I'm not sure what he's going to do. I certainly don't think he can proceed attacking and degrading the IRGC's military capacity. That's done nothing to deter them. I think the only road is the dual-use civilian targets to make the civilians suffer. Unfortunately, we are accountable to the laws of armed conflict, which severely limits that, at least in the eyes of the military, the kinds of targets that they can hit. in my view, since Iran is already attacking civilian targets, they're already committing crimes on the in international waters. They have forfeited, I think, the obligation of the United States not to hit civilian targets. But I think that's the only way that you can bring the regime down ultimately, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I don't either. And by the way, anybody joining here from X, this is the Capitalist Corner. It's on the Rational Alternative YouTube channel. Mark and I are here Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, giving our opinions and thoughts on world events. So you want to move on to this, I think it's Ben Carter is his name?
Frightening.
Buddy Carter is calling. He's a representative from Georgia, and he's calling on the FCC to review the decisions of CBS, NBC, and ABC to not air Trump's speech from July 16th, where he came out talking about, of course, how the election's stolen from him and all the other nauseating nonsense that he puts out there. But his argument is that this is newsworthy and they have a responsibility to put this before the American people. Law kind of says something different. They're not obligated to put this stuff out there. They have editorial choices. And not only that, but this has been done before. They didn't air a Biden speech where Biden called Republicans threats to democracy. They don't tend to feel that it's incumbent upon them to air political speeches. And this clearly was a political speech. This wasn't an address that was notifying the Americans of some urgent threat or some big change that was coming. It's just more threats to free speech, and it's coming from the people that bitched and moaned about Biden's threats to free speech, which were real and were worthy of bitching and moaning about. But it's just as worthy to bitch and moan when this side does it.
Yeah, here we have that classic case, Michael, of one tribe complaining that the other tribe is violating the Constitution when they are out of power, but once they get in power, they are perfectly willing to violate the Constitution like their opponents so they can gain an upper hand politically. And here you have Trump, who's a fan of using the FCC in the very same way that Roosevelt did, in the way in which it was created, Michael, and that's to hobble political opponents and to frighten them and to cow them into accepting the administration's diktats. And that's that's what we have now, man. The solution, of course, is to completely get rid of the FCC entirely. The best editor, folks, for your content is you. If you're a parent, you know, there could be plenty of information services out there for you to peruse if you want to know what a content of a particular channel is for your child's safety and welfare. You know, the care of the content that you curate is you. You are the ultimate editor. If you have a kid that you don't want them exposed to certain content, that is up to you. Stop believing that the government is going to be your parent. The FCC wasn't created to guide content anyway. It wasn't created to inform the population or really create fairness in the debating world or in the realm of ideas. It was created to hobble political opposition, which is exactly what it's being used for. Item number one of a capitalist party administration would be to get rid of the FCC and put control of the airways back in your hands where it belongs, not some arbitrary bureaucrats' dictates about what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is just, what is in your interests. Only you can determine that.
It's going to be in my hands, the airwaves?
What's that?
You said the airwaves are going to be in your hands. Me?
Not yours, but yours in the general sense of everybody will be able to control the content of the airways because they'll choose whatever it is they want.
Yes, that's what needs to ultimately happen is the airwaves need to be privatized. The government shouldn't be controlling this. The government, God, it saddens me so much. You know, you talked about, Mark, this about reading all the sad news. And there, of course, is the assaults on free speech, the First Amendment. And then there's this new guy that's taking over as prime minister in Britain. Was it Andy Burnham? Is that his name? Did I say that right?
Yep, Andy Burnham.
Andy Burnham. He's burning them, all right, because he's coming in and he's criticizing the privatization that was done by Thatcher, her free market reforms. Evidently, he's determined that that is the problem, and that government needs to have more involvement in everybody's economic lives. And that just seems to be a growing sentiment.
It does, Michael. The socialists have been able to control the narrative in such a way that the mixed economy is seen as capitalism, and the unholy alliance between economics and government is seen as what capitalism is. So capitalism is really government working for the interests of quote unquote big corporations and rich folks. The way to stem that corruption, because it is corrupt, is to now make the government work in the interests of the people. And so you use government to start controlling economic values in a slightly different way, in the interests of the common good. The results are the same, Michael. I mean, cartelization won't stop, monopolization won't stop. That's just an effect of mixed economies like this, and putting gangs of political people in positions of power where they can dictate winners and losers. And it's going to result in the same kinds of price issues, dislocations, shortages, all the things that we experience now, with resources becoming more expensive and inaccessible. All the result of government influence is just going to be systematized again. Can I just quote what this guy said here, Michael?
Sure.
Quickly. In the 1990s, Britain took some wrong turns. Political power was centralized, economic power privatized. Large parts of the country deindustrialized. I guess that means, Michael, that the capital was flowing to other areas where it was more efficient, right? So instead of protecting these industries, the free markets allowed the capital to flow where it wanted to flow, where it would actually be more beneficial, not necessarily immediately to British jobs, but certainly to the consumer, who would pay far less for goods and services because it was cheaper. It was going to places where it was cheaper. And they still haven't recovered, he says. Many feel as though they're still in decline and they don't have the ability to turn things around. And that's why we will change politics to make it more collaborative. Okay, so more of what's been going on already that's caused dislocations and problems, they're going to double down on that, Michael. More problem solving than point scoring. Michael, right now, apparently the UK has a lower GDP than the poorest state in America. It's already going down the tubes. And when you think about England being the font of the Industrial Revolution, like the source of innovation and inventiveness, because of the political system it had, where it had a common law and trial by jury and a relatively liberalized system and a relatively laissez-faire attitude towards business and towards its citizens, now becoming it's going to become a third world country pretty soon, Michael, because of its economic policies and because they cannot help themselves from voting for these idiotic labor policies.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe this morning, maybe last night, I don't know, about there's similarities between government and the mafia, right? They come and they give you these services that you don't want and then demand that you pay for them, for one. They issue threats like they do in the case of the FCC. Here, they want to control your markets. But what really got me thinking about it was these countries that are trying to organize the ceasefire in relation to, between Iran and America, because they want this Strait of Hormuz open. And it reminds me of the mobsters. When you ever watch a movie and all of a sudden there'll be a gang war and they all have this sit down. This isn't good for anybody, right? This is bad for business. We need to just slow this down a little bit. That's what it reminds me of. It's never about just doing what's right. It's like Laura Ingraham. You need to get out of this war because it's going to hurt our prospects in the fall. You need to have a ceasefire because we have to have free, our commerce needs to pass through Hormuz, which is a legitimate goal, don't get me wrong. But when assessed it to a backdrop of we need to promote human thriving and human flourishing, not because you need to have your, royal ass staying in power and not pissing off your subjects. Paul Tech says, when working with a British engineer in the 1980s, I said to him just what Mark said, as I have long admired their great engineers. Thanks, Paul. So, yeah, it's just nonstop governments and politicians turning on the free market system more and more, blaming.
Michael, banning. I mean, Hochul, the governor
Doesn't
of
matter.
New York,
Doesn't matter. Say it however you
banning
want.
banning data centers in New York. I mean, AOC and Bernie Sanders, wanting a 50% stake in these in AI industries because they should be owned by the people. In other words, controlled by these douchebags. The politicians are a regressive force on us. They prevent us from advancing, Michael. They're Luddites. They really are Luddites. And they play on the fears of the unknown, right? Because of course, progress and advancement brings with it some dislocations. Some what? You notice something bad?
I'm just gonna get rid of this asshole.
Pax pedophilia. What is that?
Yeah, that's just one of these lunatics. That's all.
Yeah, they play on the fears of the unknown, Michael, because people have always been afraid of. They've always been afraid of progress. What it will bring. This whole school of literature that was based on that, Michael, and the dystopian literature and the Gothic novels that feared scientific progress and hearkened us back to an older, purer time. We always have those people in society, and these demagogues play on that fear, Michael, to keep us stagnant and where we are. They don't realize that in life there are two options. You're either moving forward or moving backwards. You're not staying the same. You're either moving forward or moving backwards. There's no in the middle. So politicians got to get out of the way of the people and let them progress, for crying out loud.
There's some people over here on the left in the United States that are sounding the alarm bell. Bill Maher has, come out against the Democratic Party and the rising socialism within it, and how it's ridiculous what they're trying to separate. This isn't communism, it's socialism. He says, look, I've read the statements. I know what they say. Van Jones, a real, he's a left-wing guy. He said, if they were advocating for the welfare states in the Scandinavian countries, he said, I'd be for that. He said, but this is not. He said, what does that have to do with supporting Hamas, which some of these, leftists are doing, these socialists? What does this have to do with getting rid of police, with not funding the police, and abolishing prisons? He says he's been getting all kinds of calls from people within his party thanking him. But this is the thing. If you're calling Van Jones to thank him for speaking out against this, and you're not speaking out against it within your party, you're a coward. Coward.
I agree. And Michael, I'm going to give a plug to the American Capitalist Party out there.
Good.
People talk about the fact that third parties have never been really successful. And what they've done is they've usually succeeded in getting the least popular candidate elected because they split the vote. But Michael, I don't even think the American Capitalist Party is a third party anymore. I think the statists in both the Democratic and the Republican Party are moving into camps that will likely ally with one another at a certain point. And the abundance Democrats, the people who are not insane, Democrats who are socially liberal, are homeless. The constitutional conservatives are homeless. And they can find a new place to plant their seeds in the American Capitalist Party. Because in my view, there are only two ways to organize society, either by collectivism or individualism. And for the most part, the constitutional conservatives understand that, and the abundance Democrats understand that. They understand at least that human thriving needs to be, and the protection of human liberty need to be primary in a political party's platform. And so I think they'll find a home with us, and the statists will have their own platform. The American Capitalist Party will be the next side in this binary political world. So go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, check out the policies, be a part of the change, folks, and come to our national convention September 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and help us craft the policies that we're going to take to state legislatures and to the federal government and start changing the nature of the conversation. Right now, we have to be vigilant. We have to feel a sense of urgency as Democratic Socialists are beginning to actually win primary elections across the country. That should frighten you if you read their platform.
Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about the American Capitalist Party's upcoming convention?
Yeah, so there's going to be some great speakers there. Jonathan Hoenig, many of you have seen him on Fox News, or maybe you've read his book on Ayn Rand's Americanism. Has always been one of the most articulate defenders of capitalism, certainly a very principled defender on capitalism. And when I used to watch him on Fox Business, Michael, the only guy on the panel who made any sense at all. And this was a panel of people who were supposed to be advocates for capitalism, but the only straight shooter, the most principled guy there was always Hoenig, and he was always super, super articulate. So I can't wait to see what he says. We're going to have Larry Sharp there, who's a libertarian gubernatorial candidate for New York. He's got some great policies that I think would turn New York around. We endorse him as a candidate over there. We think he's New York's only hope if they want to get out of this horrible democratic socialist morass. Well, they're going to need a guy like Larry Sharp, who's super articulate and has a plan, folks. Michael's going to be speaking there as one of my favorite self-made men. Michael, you are an example, I think, for all of us, that it doesn't matter where you started from in life, that you can make your life a great project by will and by your commitment to reason, truth, and integrity. You're an example of that to me. Your friend
Carlos,
cut from a very similar cloth, was a self-made man, a thriving businessman who's going to come and speak. And of course, I'm going to be saying a few things about parties and the kind of crossroads that we are at now and the kinds of choices that we have to make if we want to move forward, folks, if we want to advance as a society. We are at that crossroads where we can make the decision to advance or to decline. There is no staying the same, folks. We either advance or decline, and the choice will be entirely up to you. So look, if you come to the party convention, you can help us craft policy. We're going to be debating these policies out loud. We're going to be voting on them, and then taking these policies to state legislatures. So this is not a game, folks. This is for real. We're playing for keeps. We want the United States to be returned to the people. Now, this is the rhetoric that the left always uses. They want things to be the people's in the hands of the people. They really don't. We do. The way that we put your life back in your hands is to take the hands off the government wheel, to stop this idea that government control in any way services you. It doesn't. The only thing the government can do is put the gun to the heads of the bad guys. They can keep them from harming you. That's the kind of civilization we want to return to, because we understand that's what civilization is, Michael. Civilization is that space and time wherein force has been so marginalized as to leave people free to live for their own lives and values. Go ahead, Michael.
I've been noticing, I don't know how much you've been online lately. Jerry Zoss with a $5 super sticker. Thank you very much, Jerry. But there's this sort of argument going on in right of center circles about whether the Odyssey is woke or not, whether it's a woke movie or not. Now, I have not seen it yet. I do want to see it. But the fact that people are so wound up about whether it's woke or not is really weird to me. Like, this is weird. And then there's this, this pushback that says, oh, nobody got upset when Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra. Well, first of all, that's not true. I have heard people complain that Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra. Secondly, Cleopatra, despite what some folks want to push, was not a black woman. I'm sorry. She just wasn't. She was Macedonian Greek, a descendant of Ptolemy, not a black woman.
See, people don't remember
Liz
that,
Taylor.
Michael. People don't remember that.
Yeah, there was an uproar. I've heard about it in my lifetime, but ultimately, I don't think that it's relevant here. There's conservatives out there, Matt Walsh, for instance, who want to make everything woke, 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 woke. It gives them something to bitch about. They're so scared about. I went on the when I first got out of prison, the first show I went on in objectivist sort of circles was the Ayn Rand fan club. And I quickly found out these guys were obsessed with this idea of woke and of critical race theory. And that's what justified siding with Trump. And I remember thinking, this stuff is just bad philosophy. It's not this big threat that you think it is. It's an easily defeatable philosophy. And it seems to have really, the energy behind that movement has certainly seemed to have died down a bit. And yet they want to make things out of it. This Odyssey is just woke, 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 woke. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, is this stuff worth arguing about?
I think woke reached its peak a couple of years ago, and it's now in decline, Michael. I think people have seen it for the empty philosophy that it is, the virtue signaling nonsense that it was. They're seeing how it's hobbled them and hurt them in many ways. And there are still some holdouts. I think there are some holdouts in network television and in the movie world. But they're quickly falling, Michael. People are tired of it. They're tired of the moralizing. They're tired of the tyranny, the language tyranny that people were throwing out there. They're just tired of it. So it was dangerous. I mean, it did expose the fact that our culture has been subject to a monolithic thought structure, an ideological structure that's been imposed on it. And it really has had an effect on our youth, on generations of youth. And this is true, but it is not as hard to counter it as the conservatives make it seem. I certainly think the conservatives will have a hard time countering it because they're not entirely rational, and they just want to return to tradition. And their version of tradition is a Judeo-Christian tradition, which in my view is a super hard case to make. Whereas we don't want to return to tradition, and unless that tradition means classical liberalism, which is secularism in government and reason in philosophy and self-interest as a moral goal of one's life. I think we have the stronger case, and given the platform, I think we can make it much better than the conservatives can.
Greg says he watched the AR fan club episode with me recently. I was actually on there twice. He says you were very polite, enjoyable in spite of those guys. Thank you. Thank you. Mark was on there too. He just doesn't recall.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Now I have to find the questions from yesterday. I don't even. Why do I forget what the question is? I don't know why I can't remember.
Didn't it have something? Did it have something?
We're up to 926 subscribers, by the way.
Slowly eking our
1,000.
Slowly progressing towards the goal of 1,000 folks. I remember.
You asked them about it was about the doll. It was about. Sorry to interrupt. It was about Annabelle.
It was.
Yeah, Robin Heron, said they'd have to pay him or her. I'm not sure. Sorry, Robin, to take that doll. And Teresa Shanti says basically what you and I said is the Raggedy Ann doll would have been more interesting in a movie because she looks innocent.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
That probably comes from some executive at the production level saying, yeah, we need something a little scarier. Thank you, Paul, for the $3 super sticker. We really appreciate that. Michael appreciates it especially. All right, Michael, you going to give the capitalist thought of the day, or is it me?
I will give the capitalist thought of the day. Old dolls often did look creepy, Ian Gilmore says.
Yeah, they did. Those porcelain dolls, super freaking creepy, man.
My capitalist thought of the day is that we need to keep our eyes on the prize. We need to keep in mind that the battle is not between countries, between governments, between our tribe, their tribe, and whatever other tribe is involved. The true battle is between those of us who advocate for reason, individual rights, limited government, freedom, like freedom to speech, for instance, and those who would interfere with these things. at the metaphorical and sometimes literal point of a gun. We need to be out there. We need to be making the arguments. We need to be talking to people. But in order to do that, we need to educate ourselves by, for instance, watching this show, reading books, staying informed. It is a battle that I believe can be won, but only if the best of us are willing to fight it. And with that, Mark, I will turn it over to you to ask the question of the day.
Well, you provided it, Michael. Thank you.
Hold
Thank you,
on.
Thank you,
Look at
Katrin, for that €5 super sticker. We got capitalists all over the world. Maybe one day Katrin will start a German capitalist party over there in Germany. God knows it would take a great deal of courage to do it. The prize, making 200-year-old the new 20-year-old. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? So my question for the day comes from Michael. Do you think woke matters anymore? Is it something that the right should be up in arms about, or should we just let it go as a footnote in history that, in 20 years, most of us will laugh about? Hi, buddy.
Hi.
Kiss me. All right, man. So look, folks, you got 23 hours to check your premises. Remember, it's what all active-minded people do. It's what we as capitalists do because we want to stay connected to the facts of reality. And it'll make you smarter if you do that as a habit. All right. So check your premises, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.